What, 7, 8? We have 8 people.
No, eight, yes.
We have 8 members.
Okay. Given the full agenda, why don't we get started? Assuming that works for everybody. All right, very good. As John Moore, I'll call the meeting to order. Brenda, would you take roll for us, please?
Board Member Boriski.
Present.
Board Member Freeman. Board Member Jolie. Present. Board Member Mercier.
Present.
Board Member Ridley. Present. Councilmember Russell.
Present.
Councilmember Ward.
Present.
Mayor Sierra.
Present.
Vice Chair Habernick. Chair Moore.
Present. All right, thank you. Moving on to public forum. Brenda, do we have anyone wishing to address us tonight?
We do not.
Okay. Then we will move on to new business, agenda item 5A for agreements with a few entities for city ditch relocation and utility crossings of the city ditch. I believe, Stephanie, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. You guys hear me all right? I'm Stephanie Ellis.
Yes, we can.
Oh, perfect. I'm an engineer with Inglewood Utilities. I have the next 2 items. I'm going to try to run through them relatively quickly given our full agenda. This first item is the agreements for the River Park development. So there are 2 developments in the city of Littleton near the southwest corner of Santa Fe and Mineral Avenue. One is the Santa Fe Park development and the other is the River Park development. The Santa Fe Park development proposed to relocate and pipe the city ditch. That was approved and constructed last year. They also proposed to relocate the McClellan Reservoir drain line. Both the city ditch and the McClellan Reservoir drain line are run through this area and they're critical infrastructure for the city. The McClellan drain line relocation will be constructed this summer and was just approved by council in May. Today we're going to be talking about the River Park development, who is proposing to pipe and relocate the city ditch as well. To provide some additional background on the River Park development, this is a residential and mixed-use development. It's being developed by Evergreen, of which we have a couple folks here if there are any questions for them. There are several proposed improvements. The first is the relocation and piping of the city ditch. There are also several proposed utility crossings of the city ditch, and then above ground improvements that are proposed to be constructed by the city of Littleton as part of a new intersection in this development. There are several agreements required for this work. The first
Recording in progress.
The first is the relinquishment and grant of easements with Evergreen. This agreement will relinquish the existing city ditch easement and grant us a new easement for the new piped location of the city ditch. We're also proposing a contract for construction with Evergreen. This defines the terms and conditions for the construction of the piping and relocation of the ditch. Evergreen is going to be completing this construction, overseeing and paying for it, and it will be inspected and approved by the city of Inglewood. We're also proposing a city ditch crossing agreement, Littleton Nichols Avenue roadway improvements. This agreement is with the city of Littleton for proposed utility crossings as well as above ground improvements associated with the new Nichols Avenue intersection. And it would define the terms and conditions associated with that crossing and those above ground improvements over the city ditch easement. There is also a proposed temporary construction easement for the Littleton Nichols Avenue roadway improvements that will allow Littleton's contractor to access the city ditch easement to install the crossing utilities and above ground improvements. We're proposing a crossing and license agreement with Evergreen for an irrigation line that is proposed to cross the city ditch. It would define the terms and conditions associated with that crossing and ensure the city ditch is protected through it. And the last agreement is a temporary construction easement for an irrigation line crossing, also with Evergreen, and this allows Evergreen's contractor to install the proposed irrigation lines. crossing the city ditch easement and be able to access our easement. We are also looking ahead at later in 2024. We have proposed future agreements for city ditch and drain line crossings, both with the River Park and Santa Fe Park developers. Does anybody have any questions?
I have one. What size pipe is the ditch going into there?
It'll be a 60-inch pipe.
Thank you.
Not seeing any other questions. Okay, then I think we'll move to proposed motion to move to recommend that City Council approve by ordinance Water and Sewer Board Agenda Items 5A1 through 5A6 as written. Can I get a motion?
I'll move.
A motion.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, thank you, Stephanie. Moving to 5B in round two. Stephanie still, thanks.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes,
We forgot to do the approval of the minutes.
that would be the royal we, and thank you for pointing that out, Peter. If we could pause and go back to agenda item 3 for the approvals for the May 14th meeting. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. There may need to be some corrections.
Okay, we'll do that after we get a second.
Thank you. Second.
Okay, any edits, changes, further discussion?
The changes that I saw were the people who were present and absent, and I think there may have been some late because it looks like everybody voted on the second or third item. So were you there last time, Mayor?
I was. I showed up maybe 5 or 10 minutes late, but
Okay.
yes.
Okay, right. I think there were 3 of them. Thank you. Oh, I moved to amend the minutes to reflect those corrections.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion, or Brenda, do you need any further clarity?
Mayor was late. Yeah,
And
the
Marcia was
I do need a little clarity. So when I do the minutes, if they're not there to vote, they're not included in the count.
But they were included in the
They were
count, but
in
they
the
weren't.
minutes?
Yes, in the minutes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. There were 3 of them.
So just to be clear, we talking like item 5A? Is that, or wait, I'm sorry, no, well,
If I'm
I just want to be
understand,
clear about what we're changing.
yeah, if I'm understanding correctly, we're adjusting who voted for the approval of the minutes, I think on 3A,
Okay.
to make sure it reflects that the people that were late did not vote. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. They're recorded as absent from the meeting, but they came in late rather than being absent. They had to in order to vote. Do you understand what I'm saying
Yeah,
now?
so they should be marked late, not absent.
Correct.
I gotcha. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Um, Um,
Councilmember Russell, can you clarify? Because I'm looking
Russell.
at the packet online.
Go ahead, Steve.
There's only one member listed as absent.
Right.
When I read it this afternoon, there were 3 members listed as absent: Marjan Freeman, Othaniel Sierra, and Caitlin Mercer. When I read the
Those
draft.
Okay.
Yeah,
Brenda, maybe there's a last minute correction. Those are, yeah, in the, well, no, the packet, I'm sorry, the packet I've got as well as shows them as late, not absent.
Okay, well, that's what it says in the packet now when I read it, and actually it was this morning. You didn't make any corrections this
No.
morning, did you? Maybe I saw it wrong. I thought it said absent.
Well, I can take a look at it and make sure it was reflected the way you want it.
Okay, thank you.
So let's, Council, propose we table the amendment and go back to the original motion. If Councilman Russell, if I have your permission for that.
That's fine.
Okay, and then just for clarity, we're approving the minutes as written with the understanding that that does reflect those 3 members were late and not absent. If that's not the case, Brenda will correct. Any further edits, changes to the minutes before we vote? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Very good. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. And we will return to the order of the meeting. Item 5B, back to Stephanie.
Thank you. I will also be talking about city ditch cured in place pipelining. Through the city ditch piping project, Jacobs Engineering completed a condition assessment on existing pipe sections of the city ditch. While most of our pipe was found to be in good condition, there is an area underneath Bellevue Avenue that showed corrosion and also a point location where the corrugated metal pipe is beginning to fail. This area is also adjacent to Reach 3 of the city ditch piping project, in which our contractor will need to eventually connect to this pipe, and the corrosion on the pipe may make that a little more difficult. Therefore, we are recommending rehabilitating the pipe with cured in place pipelining. This is a trenchless method of pipeline rehabilitation that essentially gives us a new structurally sound pipe inside the existing pipe. This work would be located on about a 200-foot stretch of city ditch pipe located underneath Bellevue Avenue near Windermere Street. The proposed scope of work would include cleaning and CCTVing the existing pipe, installing about 200 feet of CIPP liner inside our existing pipe, cleaning and CCTVing the pipe after installation of the CIPP liner, and also implementing traffic control as needed. We are proposing that we utilize C&L for this work. C&L is a pre-qualified contractor under a request for qualifications that we put out last year, and through that RFQ, we determined that they are qualified to complete CIPP work on our infrastructure. C&L also has specialized expertise with this type of work and a lot of experience with it. And on numerous occasions, C&L has performed quality work for the city. We're proposing a contract for construction with C&L with a contract amount of $153,545. We would also like to propose a 10% staff managed contingency for a total project authorization of $168,900. Any questions?
Doesn't seem like we have any.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, absolutely. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So I noticed there was rust on the pipe in the picture. Does that affect the structural integrity and lining the pipe? Will it hold the strength of that, or would the pipe possibly collapse?
So right now, with the corrosion and the rust you're talking about, the pipe is at a higher risk for collapse. With CIPP lining, this work, or this type of rehabilitation method is designed to be in pipes like this, where they essentially put this new, it's almost like a sock, through the pipe. It's a material that hardens, and then it becomes an all-new pipe that's completely structurally sound and isn't dependent on the surrounding pipe.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? All right, can I get a motion then to approve item 5B as written?
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor then, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Moving on then to item 5C. We'll keep rolling through this. And Adam, you're taking the mic from here?
Yes, my name's Adam Marquez. I'm an engineer with utilities, and I'm presenting today on the Allen Water Treatment Plant Phase 1 Office Improvements Furniture. I believe the board is aware that we are constructing offices at the Allen Water Treatment Plant. Construction is well underway with PCL Construction, and we are hoping to occupy and expecting to occupy the offices in September. So we need to furnish the new office space. There's 7 total new offices, 15 workstations. We will have a 20-person conference room, a modernized control room that will include a new control desk and a new break room. For this, we have selected BC Interiors. They have been a reliable furniture vendor procured by multiple departments within the city. They were competitively selected by South Platte Renew for their office improvement projects, and they can provide the furniture with about a 10-week lead time for our project. And we ensured that we received the same unit costs as the South Platte Renew Operations and Admin Complex project, so we're getting sort of the benefit of the economies of scale from a much larger project to ensure that the pricing was competitive. So our recommendation is an approval of a contract for services with BC Interiors in the amount of $136,000 plus a 10% staff managed contingency, requesting in total $150,000 project authorization.
Any questions?
I have a process question. So did we have to go out to bid individually for this, or are we able to use the Renew bid process? Does that fulfill our requirements?
Yeah, so that's what we did, is because South Platte Renew is part of the city administrative process, is administratively run by the city of Englewood. We go through all the city procurement processes. So by going through a competitive bidding process, we were able to piggyback onto that project to get the same pricing and the same competitive response from them. And they've been really so far they've been really good from a response perspective on that project, and the pricing has been actually really, for higher quality furniture, very competitive. So we're not going with the most expensive, highest quality, but we want to make sure that it's durable and lasts. And so they've really done a nice job of finding that sweet spot of, it's an industrial facility, has a lot of high impact work associated with it, and competitive pricing associated with it. We were able to translate that over to the Allen plant as well.
Gotcha, that's great. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right. Then would someone like to move agenda item 5C as written?
I'll move.
Second.
Wonderful. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. And then moving on to 5D. Peter, I think this is yours.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The item I have before the board tonight is an update to our rate and fee schedule to address the meter pit installation process that we've been overhauling over the past several months in coordination with the AMI program and the lead program and the flat rate program. And as part of that process, we'd been talking about pricing moving forward, and we had been referring to this general number around $300 for the cost of doing that. And looking back at what our current process is, what customers right now are informed of when they want to install a meter on their line is that it's $1,100. And so this was brought to our attention at a council meeting by actually Councilmember Russell. And so we went back and revised the schedule to reflect what we're planning to implement moving forward, because based on how the AMI project, the outside meter pit installation project, and the lead project will implement over the next couple of years, we are expecting that the ownership line of the individual service line will be delineated such that this new pricing reflects that ownership delineation. So in short, the city will own the meter pit and everything from the meter pit to the line in the street. The meter will be purchased by the entity or homeowner that has the actual account to activate the account, and then the homeowner will be responsible for the line as it exits the meter pit and goes to the house. So that'll be the homeowner's responsibility. Everything that is from the meter pit back to the street will end up being the city's responsibility, and then the meter becomes the piece that everybody who wants a new account will purchase, and then the city will install that. So that's what we're addressing with this change. Additionally, the last bullet on this was there's a I'm sorry, I'm ahead of myself on this. But the last piece of this is when we ultimately end up with this new rate schedule that I'd like to get some feedback from the board on, and we talked a little bit about, is how far do we want to retro this? Because there are people who are in line waiting for a meter, but we haven't gotten to them because we don't typically do them during the winter. There's also people who have paid for a meter who have a lead service line, so we're not doing those because they're part of the lead service line program. And so there's this window of time where we've been preparing to evolve this process to get the fees in line with what we ultimately expect the customer responsibility and the city's responsibility to reflect. And there's these people who've paid who are in this kind of no man's land in between. And we would recommend that we go back a certain period of time to credit those people back the difference, because it's not their fault that we've been in the process of evolving all of this. And so I'd like to get some feedback on that. So next slide. So this is essentially how many we're talking about. We have about 1,100 flat rate accounts left. 300 of those we anticipate are lead. The other 841, based on our estimates, are right now categorized as non-lead. And then you look at the inside meter set. These are the meters that are not set in a meter pit. They're in a crawl space or in a basement, and we're slowly want to move all those into outside meter sets. Makes it easier for us to access it, makes it less disruptive for our customers, and ultimately it provides a level of consistency across the city that we think long-term will be more streamlined and better for our customers and our meter infrastructure personnel. And so you can see the breakdown of how that looks. Next slide. So essentially the current practice is someone calls in, says, I want a meter because I want to get off my flat rate. And here's all the pieces that they pay for. So they pay for the meter, the register, the ERT, which is the encoder, reader, receiver, transmitter, Then they also pay the meter pit, the yoke, an additional 20% handling fee, and an 8.5% tax. So what we're proposing to pull out of that cost is the meter pit, the yoke, and the 20% handling fee, because the meter pit, again, we believe should be a city infrastructure piece, the yoke, same thing. And the 20% handling fee was actually put in place many, many years ago because they do these as one-offs. And if you're doing them as one-offs, then there was the cost of doing that. We're planning to do this as a bulk programmatic approach, and so we don't think that that's a fee that we need to be charging our customers. So you can see the proposed customer fee would be the meter, the register, and the encoder, and then a tax on those things. So what that translates to an actual dollar amount, next slide, is you can see the current pricing on a 3/4, when you add all those things up, is $1,196. This is what people have been paying through this program for years. What we're recommending is we move it to $335, and then the difference, well, you can see on the 3/4, there's the inside set conversion. So the first one is the flat rate conversion, the $1,196. The inside set conversion would be $793, and then the flat rate conversion for the proposed pricing would be $335, and that's because this will be the first time they'll have a meter. And if they're an inside set that we're moving to an outside set, there's no fee for a customer when we do that. So the difference of about $900, I didn't do the math on this, but right around $900 is the part that we would also like some guidance in terms of what you think is a reasonable time frame for us to provide a refund back to those who've already paid the $1,196. So next slide. So what we're recommending is to revise the pit pricing practices and the associated fee schedule to reflect what we've just talked about. You can see the pieces that will be a part of that new fee. And then the last piece, this is the bullet I was thinking of before, is we're also correcting a typo on the rate schedule relative to the sewer fund, and it was in the memo. Essentially, we left out a decimal point. It was supposed to be 25% and not 2.5%, which was the late fee for annual sewer customer bill. And so we just want to put that back to what it was supposed to be. It's correcting that typo. So that's what we're recommending is this new fee and then the correction to that schedule, that error in the schedule. Any questions?
Before we kind of talk about the specific monetary values with these, can we get a little background on why there is such a mismatch of in-home? There are some kind of historic meter pits out there. Did that just depend on who the director was at the time and kind of what they were doing, or was it just fully up to the developer and we kind of took on some of these properties?
So I don't know that I have we haven't dug into the history of this. My guess is there were periods of time in the industry when the industry standard was to do outside meter set, and then there was a period of time when that shifted to inside meter set. Every other utility I've worked at has a mix of both, and I think that has something to do with a change in industry standard approach. The other places I've worked have moved away from inside meter sets to outside meter sets because of the disruption of the customer, the getting into someone's house, the ability. Basically, it's easier to go in and just change out the meter or the ERT without disrupting the customer. So I think from a customer impact perspective, that's why there's much more of a shift to outside meter sets. I would anticipate that this is a thing that will probably take 10 or 15 or more years to fully get everything converted over. We can do a large amount with the lead program. We can do a large amount with the flat rate program. And then you have these leftover, for lack of a characterization, and copper lines that have inside meter sets that over time we'll do a programmatic approach, and we'll probably do so many conversions a year and then move them over time. So that would be probably my best guess on it without having dug into the history of it.
Any other questions before we address Peter's question to us? All right, doesn't sound like it.
So Chair, maybe we could do the proposed motion on this, and then the last piece we could talk is just a general sense from the board in terms of comfort level with our, an internal business practice of how far back we go for a rebate or a refund.
That works for me. So can I get a motion on 5D as written?
I move to approve 5D as written.
I'll second.
I second.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries, and Peter, back just for the follow-up discussion.
Yeah, so there's generally, I think I've thought about this in terms of there's generally what I would say is 3 timeframes that we look at. One is no time frame where we don't provide any credit back, and we only look at moving forward. So that is one possibility. A second time frame is a year because it's a nice round number. A third time frame was 18 months because 18 months is is consistent with the timing of the work that we've done with our lead program and implementing a full comprehensive lead and flat rate removal program. So we've been doing that for about 18 months. And then the last time frame will be 2 years because that's the state statute for how far you retroactively pay for an overcharge on something. And so that there's no real science to this. It's just more of a, how nice do we want to be to our, I think this is not nice, but I mean, how understanding we want to be with our customers. We don't anticipate this will be a substantial financial hit for us. There'll be some money, but it's not something that's going to cause a significant financial burden.
And Peter, can you clarify if is this just for the recent flat rate conversions or also moving meters outside the house to a meter pit?
So my recommendation would be, I don't know how many of those we have, but my recommendation would be anybody who's paid for those pieces that we are now taking out of the fee, whether it was because of a flat rate or it was because of moving an inside set to an outside set, that I would recommend that we would try to find the person who paid and then provide a credit to them of the difference. Now, what I wouldn't recommend also on this is we want to give the credit to the person who paid, and if the property has changed hands and that person is long gone, we don't recommend that we go trying to find people who've moved to other states and provide them a credit. What we are trying to do is take care of people where it's easy to locate them, and we're not doing a lot of work trying to find, people to give credit to, and we don't want to give a credit to the new homeowner who didn't ever pay the fee.
So Peter, do we happen to know how many people are affected by this
Go ahead.
within the 4 different buckets or 3 different buckets?
I don't know that I have them split up in buckets. I think in talking to staff, we think it's somewhere around 30-ish. So we think the cost impact is maybe around $20,000, somewhere in there. We haven't done the complete math on that. But that's our estimation right now, is it's somewhere, the cost impact would be somewhere around $20,000 on the upper end.
Do you know what percent of those were for selling the property?
My guess would be a lot of them would be, because that's what forces this to occur, is that change in property ownership. But if we can find the original person who sold the property and we can easily get them a credit, we would recommend that would be something that we would do.
I'm happy to jump in kind of first here with my perspective. I think since most of them were part of real estate transactions, I'm fine with setting a date as of when this was voted on versus kind of back paying.
It would be my preference to refund anyone who is an existing homeowner that went to a new meter, not as a result of the property changing hands. If we can somehow delineate those, that would be the process that I would adopt.
Okay, we can look at that.
So that would be voluntarily going from fixed to meter, not just to sell a property.
Correct. Yes.
This is John. I want to jump in. I'm going to abstain for the rest of this discussion, realizing I might potentially be impacted by some of this. So I'll sit silently, and Ty, you can facilitate till we move off of this item.
Will do.
I actually would like to see us do what Councilmember Ward suggested. Also, I would like for us to go back, especially to the people who have paid already and are sitting and waiting on it. I think definitely those people. I probably would be in favor of going back 2 years if it involved the houses that we're talking about, people that still live in the city.
Yeah, I think you actually raise a good clarifying point on this, which is there are people who've been on hold because of the fact that it's a lead service line. And whether the property has changed hands or not, they did pay and didn't receive the benefit. So I think I think anybody who paid and we didn't follow through on it, I think it'd be fair to address those as well, even if it was a property transaction, if that makes sense. Because they were waiting on us to do it, and we've held those because we knew we had a lead program coming forward. So I think that might be something that we look at.
So that's if no work has been done up to this point, but it's been paid, we would refund
Right.
the difference.
Yeah, so basically we would refund them what this new fee would be, because in theory, that's what they would have paid because of the way we're implementing the new program.
Any other questions or comments?
So it would be a combination between Councilmember Ward and Councilmember Russell's ideas.
I think that addresses the issue of people who've paid and are waiting on us, and then people who've paid and voluntarily did it because they were trying to get off a flat rate, and we charge them, just doing the right thing. I think we can find those and do a little work over the next couple months to figure out what that delineates, and then I can just report back to the board what we found, and then how we've implemented this recommendation. We're trying to be fair, that's what we're trying to do.
The one kind of catch-all there on if they still live in the city, how would we approach if they bought within the city and then kind of inherited a metered home? Would that be something that you'd like to see the rebate applied to if they sold a flat rate, purchased a meter since they've already gotten the meter? I think that's maybe something we should chat about a little bit.
Right, I think that might be a good idea, because they just exchanged one property for another in Inglewood. If it's not too hard to track them down.
Yeah, I think we can go back. I think we can take the recommendations of the general consensus I'm sensing from here is that if we go back and we look 2 years to those couple different categories and then see what we come up with, and then see who it misses, and we can have those buckets of customers. And then if it's wildly different than what the general sense I think that I have and that this discussion is based on, then we can bring it back and talk some more about it. Does that work? And again, this doesn't need action. It's just I want to make sure the board's comfortable with how we implement this refund process, which typically is something that we would just do as part of a business practice, but this is a little bit bigger.
Well, if that's all the comments, John, you can take back over.
All right, thank you, Ty. All right, Peter, you'll come back if you need any clarification.
Perfect, thank you.
Item 6, and let's just do a time check. I do know, I believe we're losing the council members at 6. So we'll just do what we can in 19 minutes and see where that leaves us.
We do have a quorum if they leave.
Okay.
Challenge accepted.
Still would be great to get the meat of it in while they're here.
I think a lot of this we've covered before, and so this is just every year with our budget process, we slowly evolve the development of the budget, and I think between I actually think in the next 17, 18 minutes we could probably get through all of this, and we'll see if I hold true to that. So, okay, so we're going to talk tonight about the water fund, the sewer fund, and the stormwater fund. With me is Director Rochelle, Public Works Director, to handle the stormwater fund of this discussion, and I'll handle the water and sewer. So the utilities department, I think many of you have seen this before. We do water and sewer infrastructure for 34,000 residents and 2,100 businesses. Next slide. Our strategy is to modernize the utility and improve customer experience. You've seen this, and that's what our projects are geared towards. Org structure is the director, the 3 business units, so business solutions, operations and maintenance, and engineering. You can see the FTE counts that we've built up over the last 4 years to what we believe is actually a pretty solid and sustainable workforce moving forward. And then you can see the relationship with the Water and Sewer Board, and as well as the Director of Utilities relationship as the EMRF Board President. Next slide. Our connection is to infrastructure, safety, sustainability, well-being, and governance. And our focus is taste, odor, and hardness, the lead service program, and then continuing to deal with the aging infrastructure and deferred maintenance. And our major project updates are on AMI, the space improvements, and the city ditch piping project. So our total budget request for 2025, so this is just the total of everything. So operations in 2024, the budget request was 15.7. In 2025, it goes down a little bit actually to 15.3 for a decrease of about 400,000 of 3%. And our capital is at 31.8 in 2024 and 36.3 in 2025. A significant portion of that is the execution of the lead removal program. So there's an increase there, but we will be heavy into construction on the lead removal program next year. So total budget in 2024 was 47 million for the water fund. It's up to 51.6, but that will come back down once we get through some of this, the lead program and some of this deferred maintenance. So this is what it looks like from a financial perspective. I think from a total perspective, you can see that the total budget was 31.1. The amount spent will be 19.5. We anticipate 11.6 going back to fund balance. That is largely the timing of the execution of the lead program. We were optimistic in the timing of when we could start executing, so we wanted to make sure that we at least had the money in the budget. The key with the enterprise funds is this money just goes back into the fund balance and then it just gets reappropriated for the same project. So it's not like the money is lost. It's still spent on water fund related capital projects. But that's where the big decrease is on the capital execution. Our budget proposal is that the personnel actually stays pretty flat, 3% increase total. Commodities actually, again, pretty flat. Contractual professionals up a little bit at 2%. The capital is the big one here, and that's because of the execution of our lead program. Debt service goes down a little bit based on the schedule for debt service, and you get the total of 47 and 51. Here's the capital. You saw these slides, I believe in April. This is our capital program. You can see the strike through or the updates that we've made over the last couple months as we've refined this. Next slide. And that gives you our total 5-year capital moving forward and the planned execution to take care of the deferred maintenance. Next slide. And there's the totals for the capital. Next slide. Our enhancements, we are going to update the water master plan this year. We did our first master plan in 2019, so 2019, so we'll be updating our master plan. That's essentially a 5-year schedule. They were adopted in 2020. That's where we're at. So they were started in 2019, adopted in 2020, which means we'll do our 5-year update on the master plan in 2025. And then we are aware of 3 potential water court cases that could go to trial. So we're bumping up the water legal in the anticipation of at least one of those going to trial. If more than one goes to trial, then we'll have to reappropriate some money from a different part of the budget. But we don't necessarily want to plan for all 3 going for trial because we think some of them will settle. So it's always kind of it's a bit of a crapshoot as it relates to whether things go to trial or not. Next slide. So you can see what that looks like in what our plan is for that. So it's just a master plan update. Next slide. And then legal, just talked about that. Trial schedule. Next slide. Inflationary impacts, we've looked at some of these, and you can see there are some high inflationary impact items, but they're low dollar amount in comparison. So even though there's a 27% increase in postage and mailing, it only results in about $20,000 in change. So our highlighted inflationary impacts total about $100,000 on some of our things like gas and electric and operating supplies. Next slide. Our revenue proposal is what we talked about in April. So we stick to the 4.5% rate increase as defined in the financial plan. The water connection fee, this would go up based on the engineering news record construction cost index, which next year is scheduled at 3.72%. Capital investment fee would go up $1. If you recall, that goes up every other year. Next 2025 is the on year that goes up. And then we would propose a drinking water loan fee, which essentially pays for a certain portion of the debt service on the drinking water fund loan, which funds the lead program plus other projects that we think that $40 million will be able to fund, and that's a new fee at $5. And we are going to refer to that as a drinking water loan fee because that's really what it is for, is to pay that principal. Next slide. We've seen this slide before. This is all the loans and funding that we've gone after. Essentially totals a little over $100 million. So going from 2020 without a lot of funding to now we have $100 million to invest. It's been one of the nice successes of the last couple of years is getting that federal funding. Next slide. Just to run through this quickly again, this is where we started. Next slide. Then we added the change in rates, which then unlocked the ability to go after federal funding. We had ARPA, next slide. And then you add WIFIA, and then you add the first part of the SRF loan, of which in that is $10 million of free money from the feds. That's the grant money, principal forgiveness. Then $22 million is the rest of the drinking water fund loan. And then the $5.5 million, that's the $5 fee to pay the debt service on that. And then the pink is where we have funding gaps, which we believe that first 5.5 million, we have an approach that we think we can close that gap, and which really puts us in about a 2028 timeframe that we think is an adequate amount of time to actually plan for putting together a better, longer term funding program for the utility to make it sustainable well into the future. So we've still got some work to do, but we think that work comes in the later 2020s, 2028, 2029 timeframe. Next slide. You can see how that breaks down. The past, the present, and the future. We're in the big middle present right now. Next slide. How that translates to rates. These are all repeat slides that you've seen. We've changed the colors a little bit to make it stick out a little bit more. The thing we added here was mill levy. So you can see where Englewood is on the left at 6,000 gallons. Next slide. Move that to include stormwater. You can see where we fall currently and where we fall once we change both the water, the sewer, and the stormwater fund rates and fees. Next slide. At 10,000 gallons, so the water usage goes up, moves us a little bit to the right. Next slide. At 2,000 gallons, we move a little bit more towards the middle, but still in the lower half for all this comparison. And when you look at the comparison, we tried to we didn't just try to limit to a few different entities. We tried to get a pretty good cross section of utilities across the Front Range, both districts and other city utilities and Denver Water and other entities. We wanted to have a pretty good cross section to see where we fell. In all of these, I think the successes between water, sewer, and storm, you can see we fall to the lower end of the middle on the total bill for these three utilities. Next slide. That is it for the water fund. Would you like us to go through all three and then questions at the end, or would you like to stop on questions? Sewer goes pretty fast, and we'll leave no time for victory.
We'll go fast on stormwater. I'd kind of prefer to hop in now.
Okay.
Just so we don't lose train of thought. My question was, we had, I think, 1.1 million or something in salary savings. Are we staffed up now? We're pretty close?
We are. We actually right now have 2 vacancies that we're recruiting and we have 2 vacancies that we're recruiting, one that we're holding right now because it's a construction manager and we don't think that we need a permanent person for that. We're probably going to handle that with some contract employees. And then we have 3 billing staff that are approved, but we aren't going to hire them until we transition to monthly billing for connector districts, which has been requested by connector districts. It's just we got to get the billing system implemented before we take on another project like that. So those were approved a couple of years ago. We fund them every year in anticipation, but we haven't hired them and won't hire them until we make that progress.
Thank you.
I'll ask a quick question regarding the postage and mail services. So is that in anticipation of people still requesting a paper bill, or are there other mailing literature that we're doing as well?
So I don't anticipate there's going to be a significant change in terms of the number of people getting a physical bill versus not. We want to drive people to be more electronic. However, it may not happen that way. As it relates to the second piece of that, in terms of what's driving up some of those costs, when Sarah gets back, I can check with her on that and get back to you with a better answer on that one. But right now, we're anticipating the same level of online versus not.
So we're being conservative with the number then?
I think so.
Okay.
I think we're being conservative, yes. Okay. Sewer fund. This is actually pretty quick. So you can see the operations and capital. 29 million stays pretty flat. The bulk of this cost is the 50% of South Platte Renew. Next slide. Return to fund balance. You can see there's salary savings. So SPR, we have consistently been down about 5 employees no matter what we do. We lose operators, we lose mechanics, we lose engineers. So we tend to have more salary savings than we would like, but we're also seeing a shift in the job market to, we think we're going to finally be able to fill those positions more consistently. Next slide. So this is our plan for, you can see most of the things stay the same. There's an increase in contractual professional services. That's just our outside contractors to help with studies and designs, but also some of the professional services we need for some of the work that we do on the system itself.
Sorry to interrupt you, Director Van Ryn. The
Yep.
council has to take our leave.
Yep, it was me because I'm sorry, Victor. I need to apologize to you. We'll do it again in a couple months. Yeah, we'll do it again in a couple. It's not gonna be the last.
Thank you, council members.
Thank you. Okay, on the capital side, you can see the most significant cost is SPR. The other cost that we have is those, we talked about those common owned sewers. That's where we're gonna focus some of our capital investment, is fixing some of those issues throughout the city. And so that's sewer pipe and manhole rehab. It falls under that. Next slide. We're gonna update the sewer master plan as well. Same enhancement slide. Inflationary impacts, the postage and mail. Next slide. Revenue proposal, we're proposing the 4.5% per the financial plan, which translates to the rate changes you see. So outside city rates go from 4.35 to 4.58. Inside the city go from 2.88 to 3.01. And then inside sewer with treatment and collections go from 3.74 to 3.92. And then the connection fee follows the ENR index. Quickly, South, that's an interesting color. So if you all recall, South Platte Renew is the regional joint venture owned by Englewood and Littleton. We serve 108 square miles, 300,000 people, 19 connector districts. And this is the Sewer Enterprise Fund, is where Englewood pays their 50/50 funding of South Platte Renew. Next slide. These are our strategic plan priorities: long-range planning and investment, infrastructure reinvestment, fiscal responsibility and transparency, innovation and partnerships, SPR Safe, and the employee experience. Next slide. You can see the operations budget goes from 21.5 to 23.4, and then the capital goes from 18.4 to 16.0 essentially. That goes down because we have a bit of a higher capital load this year, because money that we had expected to be spent in 2023 on our building project right now, about 1.8 million of that did not get spent in 2023, so it's moved over to 2024. And then you have the completion of the rest of the building. So there was a peak in that that capital amount of 18.4. And so by the time we get to 2025, we move back down to around 16 million, which is what our general amount from a capital perspective is on an annual basis, because that fits with our financial plan, so that we don't want big spikes and then low valleys. We want to smooth it out. Next slide. These are our capital projects over the next 5 years. So this is the first, and if anybody would like me to talk about what digester, DAFT, and dewatering MCC project is, I'm happy to, but it's wastewater treatment stuff. Next slide. And then, so if you recall, when I presented these slides a couple months back, I said we were still working on the 5-year capital, but focus on the total on the 5-year. I said this should be about 80 million. It came in at 82.34 over the next 5 years, which you can see is generally about 16 million a year. I think when we get to 28 and 29, I've already talked about staff about moving a little bit of 29 into 28 to smooth out that 14.7 to 17.8. But fortunately, that's a few years out, so we've got some time to plan for that. Questions on the sewer fund?
Do we bid out the RFPs for the master plan updates together? I noticed the other two were both Hazen. Was that just coincidence?
When we did it the first time around, we bid all 3 at once.
Okay.
And so Hazen did all 3 of our initial master plans. And we'll do the same for water and sewer. And I believe, are you guys part of that? Have we talked about this? Okay, so we will talk to Public Works about that same kind of update to get that 5-year update on stormwater if it's deemed necessary.
Thank you.
Because stormwater's done a lot of much more intricate planning beyond just the initial master plan. And so I think it's something that we can, their timing might be a little bit different than ours as it relates to that update.
And just real quick on stormwater, we are working with Mile High Flood District right now to wrap up a master plan update, so.
So theirs is already being done. We're behind the curve on this.
We're overdue and almost done.
But those first 3 were done together, and that was a baseline in 2019 because we had no plans. And so we did water, sewer, and storm. It's how we got a cost-effective price to actually just get us baseline plans for all 3 that then set the stage for the stormwater program as it moved into Public Works, and then set the stage for water and sewer to get us to where we are today and, move into the financial plans, the funding, the projects, and addressing a lot of these things. I'm sorry, you had it.
Yeah, just a quick question. So I noticed we give a lot of money back, both in water and sewer, going back to the fund balance.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about both of those? Just real quick, why, I don't want to make you go back to the slide for water, but for sewer, it seemed like we give back quite a bit at the end of the year. Is that just because projects aren't being completed, or?
So on the sewer side, we have worked really hard to get to, our target is 95% execution of the budget at South Platte Renew. So if you think of the sewer fund, the bulk of the sewer fund is South Platte Renew. There's a small amount that is staffing level, proportionate share staffing level of employees in Englewood, and then that small $480,000 a year for the sewer rehab. Our goal is to be at 95%. I think last year we were at 93% execution. This year we're actually projecting to be closer to 98% execution. And so our biggest challenge with funds going back to fund balance is personnel, is recruiting, is maintaining and recruiting staffing. You have some of the other things that if you look at debt service, one of the reasons why money goes back to debt service is because as we are pushing off drawing on WIFIA as far as possible, because WIFIA is like for lack of a better term, a home equity line of credit. And so it's there, it's available. The second we draw it, we start paying interest. So in 2023, when we were putting together the 2024 budget, we were thinking that we were probably going to have, we might have to draw on WIFIA. As we move through the projects, the projects and the funding, we have found that we can push that even farther. And what we want to make sure that we do is we're drawing that as late as possible in the window that we can draw it. And that's where you see 1.1 in debt service that we didn't end up using. So that's another area where we underspent. And then the third one is capital. Capital, especially when you're ramping up capital. So if you think of those curves of where we started, where we're not investing anything in capital, to now we're trying to invest 30 or 40 million a year, and then we'll come back down to a more sustainable, in the water fund, a more sustainable $5 million a year. The ramping up process of spending capital to get it into construction takes time. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to, as we're budgeting now for something a year from now, what we don't want to do is under budget available funds for construction if it happens faster than we are anticipating. Often what happens though is we don't execute capital as fast as we ideally want it to go, which then essentially what it does is just shifts it out another year. And as the water fund is, so this year, because of the lead program, we will finally be executing tens of millions of dollars because that is finally underway and construction will start. So I think it's really those few things that build to why you see so much of it going back to fund balance. The majority of those, the two biggest culprits are usually capital execution rate and salary savings because we just have vacancies and it's a hard competitive job market.
Yeah, totally understand. When we have $5 million that we're returning, we've essentially taken, and just correct me if I'm wrong here, but we've taken that $5 million out of some sort of interest-bearing account and put it where it can be used for a capital project. So the city isn't making any money on that $5 million. Is that correct?
That one I have to check with our internal finance group on because
I understand like the timing of projects, but I think we also had to be mindful that that money is now not gathering interest for the city.
So what I have to check is how liquid that account is, because if we budget for it, doesn't mean that necessarily comes out of an interest-bearing account. It's just got to make sure it's available for when it does need to be made available. And so even though we're budgeting for it, it doesn't necessarily mean that we stick it in some, 0.2 interest account that it then draws from. We're getting into the mechanics of how the finance department manages money to leverage as much interest as possible, especially in this interest rate environment. So this is actually probably a better answer for Sarah. And when she gets back, I'll ask her, because our goal on all this is to minimize interest on debt and maximize maximize any interest that we can get off of available funds that we have. Because again, everything in sewer stays in sewer, everything in water stays in water. So we don't lose it. It's just a timing of when we use it. Also, we don't want to be in a situation where we're underspending by, so if we were underspending our budget long-term, if we were underspending by 60% every year, it means we're overcharging for the service. And what we want to get to and where we've gotten to at SPR, and it's taken time to get here, is that 95% execution number. And each year that we've executed the water fund budget, we've moved that number up. And I think, this year we might get to 80% execution. But the key is we want to get to a point where we're sustainably running at about 95% because that means our rates are matching what our costs are. And so we're keenly aware of if you underspend too long, you're charging too much.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions, or I think that'll wrap up the budget.
So we
right.
still have stormwater. We don't want to forget about Victor. Still here. I took all his time.
Please go ahead.
All right. Well, good afternoon. Thank you for having us here. So to cover the stormwater budget, a lot of the same things you've already seen, a lot of similar discussion topics that Peter's already talked about when it comes to enterprise funds, returning balance, and so on and so forth. So just quickly, our mission's up on the screen there. So I won't read it to you, but you get the gist there, having seen it multiple times. Our organizational structure, we have 7 1/4 FTEs, and that is spread throughout different departments. So stormwater does fund some utilities. Our billing for stormwater goes through the utilities department, through the utilities billing. Our stormwater team is fully staffed as of April of this year. We did have 2 vacancies for about a year, and we luckily have just filled those. Next slide. Our program areas, system repair and maintenance, planning and prioritization, capital projects, and of course, program funding. Strategic plan connection, almost everyone there with a strong emphasis on infrastructure and transportation. And then our funds returned back. So similar to Peter, which you'll see here, touching on the top line there, vacancies a little over 300,000 returned back to the fund balance. And then the lion's share for public works is in capital. So you'll see close to 15.5 million. That is the South Inglewood Flood Reduction Project. Did not get started until very late in 2023. We were under contract in the November, December timeframe, and that's why you see that big delta. That also speaks to a little bit of the debt service. So because we were late getting that project started, we also did not have a full year's worth of the loan payments for that project and loan associated. So our budget proposal for 2025, salaries pretty much on par, no real change on commodities. We do anticipate a drop in professional services. That is because our capital projects have been designed. We're not using consultants to do any designs, planned anyways, in 2025. Capital will also drop. Again, that's because of the South Inglewood Flood Reduction Project. We do have a one-time enhancement that has been purchased, and that is supposed to come forward. We asked it in 2024, and it was approved. We don't expect to receive the vehicle until 2025. A lot of our vehicles are taking over a year to be manufactured, put together, and then delivered to us. And then, of course, you get our debt service. This is a breakdown on the capital projects themselves. This is that almost $4 million you saw on the previous slide for 2025. And then you can see those tail off in the 5-year totals. Again, with the bulk in 2025 being line 5, the South Inglewood stormwater improvements that we're doing. We do have one enhancement request for 2025, and that is for a closed circuit CCTV pipe inspection trailer. Right now, the city does not have that. We are using a consultant. We surveyed the north half of the city in 2023, and this year we're surveying the south half of the city. The contractor is going to provide us with GIS data as well as video. And then once we're done, staff have pretty limited capability to survey our storm pipes. So the goal here is once we have this baseline by our contractor, staff will now be able to do our own inspections moving forward. And then a breakdown again on the trailer there. So one time, $100,000. We do anticipate a payback in the 3 to 5 year range, depending on usage. Our current contract, we're paying approximately plus or minus $2 a foot for the contractor to inspect. And for our revenue proposal, we are proposing a little over $1. It's $1.03 increase for 2025. So that's approximately a 5% increase consistent with the construction cost index for an annual. We are also planning to do a rate study for stormwater at the end of this year and then use that moving into any increases in 2026. And happy to answer any questions.
Can you remind us when the stormwater fee kicked off? When did the city enact that?
I'd have to go back and double check. There was a council request to that. It's, when it became a stormwater enterprise, if I remember correctly, it's been over a decade, easy.
And then my other question was, does Utilities or South Platte Renew have a CCTV trailer that can be used, or do they not?
We have one for the sewer. So the sewer fund has a CCTV trailer. It's not currently, it's not currently functional with the most updated software, and we haven't invested in that yet. But the other piece of this is that runs through sewer pipes, and we don't want to run it through a stormwater pipe. So it's part of the reason why we have the two different capabilities, is because we don't want to contaminate storm pipes with a sewer CCTV, so we try to keep those separate. No, on the water side, we don't have anything. There's nothing in South Platte Renew because most of our stuff is, I mean, it's all plant. So, I mean, we have internal piping. If we have to do anything, we hire someone to do it. On the water side, the challenge is just we don't have enough big transmission mains that you'd be able to isolate them down and run a TV through in order, we don't have a big enough system to justify having that. If we were to do that with some large transmission mains, we would probably contract that out separately.
To that point, I'll just add real quick, utilities and public works do share other equipment, what we call yellow iron, like backhoes. There's a vac truck. When public works vac truck went down, utilities and public works coordinated very heavily on, the availability of that one piece of equipment, and it saw more use probably last year than it's seen in quite a while.
I had one question.
Marjan?
Oh.
Marjan's had her hand up.
Sure,
She can go ahead.
Go ahead. I can't see any hands.
Thank you, John.
Yes.
So I was wondering, I apologize if I don't remember the equipment that you're requesting to purchase for this year. So by considering purchasing that, so I would imagine that it's not contracted out. So is that that saving is considered in the budget?
It would be, and I believe it's noted on the slide there that it would pay back, the purchase of it would pay back in future years once purchased. And based on the amount of use, we're expecting it to pay back in 3 to 5 years' time. And again, that varies a little bit on how much use. The more we use it, the quicker it pays back. And that's because we would not be using contractors.
So, yeah, I understand. So that's considered then?
Yes.
The saving,
Yeah,
but you
moving
don't
forward,
know
it would be.
what you're anticipating because you don't know how much you're going to use that. Correct?
Correct.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
so real quick, this is my first budget process. So bear with me on this question. When do we see new positions that are being requested? Is that through this process?
So they would be enhancements. Generally, they would be in this process.
Okay. So in your budget, you're not asking for additional positions?
So one of the struggles that we have in Public Works with requesting positions is we want to be able to provide data and show that the position is warranted. And without having our vacancies filled, it's difficult to show the case and the data for those positions. Well, I do believe additional stormwater positions are needed. However, we don't have the data because we had vacancies over half of the year. So what we're trying to do is build that baseline, show what our team can do in its current structure and capacity, and then bring forward probably in 2025 a case for additional positions if needed.
Okay. Well, you fully have my support because 7.5 people, some of those administrative people is not enough to run this program.
Well,
So you have my support.
I appreciate that. And in the field, the team consists of 2 operators. So I have a manager, 2 operators, and a specialist.
For the entire system.
For the entire system, yeah.
Yep.
And they're doing phenomenal work. I mean, they've
Right.
done things that haven't
And
been
you're
done in
bringing
2 decades.
additional services in-house if you're going to be doing those inspections.
Correct. And our team would be doing that. And we coordinate again with utilities and our streets team. It's kind of an all hands on deck.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I have an answer to that question too, because we actually are requesting 2 new positions at South Platte Renew, which goes through a bit of a different budget process because that runs through a joint council meeting with the 2 city councils in August. And so that's where we make those proposals. In this budget that we provided is 2 positions. So from a history perspective, I started at South Platte Renew about 6 years ago. The total FTE count was 88.75. After about I think a year and a half or 2 years, I reduced that to 86, so I dropped 2.75 FTEs. And we've restructured and stabilized to the point where we see 2 positions that we are going to propose this year. One being an additional operator position, because we're just a little bit slim on operators. And then another position that we have it scheduled right now as an engineer position, but it's really dedicated to our pilot and research center work, which is our innovation work, which is geared totally towards the future of meeting our temperature regulations, our nutrient regulations, our PFAS regulations, all these massive cost impacts that we're going to see over the next 15 years. So we're ramping up that whole subunit, and so we will be asking to move back to 88 positions this year, and 2 of those positions, those are the 2 positions that we'd be requesting, and that's at South Platte Renew.
All right, any further questions for tonight? All right, I think we're good. Thank you. Let's see, no old business. I think we're to board staff's choice. I say anything besides the look ahead schedule, Peter?
No, unless there's any questions on the look ahead schedule. We still have a lot of things coming because we've got a lot of things moving, which is actually nice. It just makes these meetings a little bit longer than probably they used to be. So hopefully we'll stabilize.
And board members' choice, anything further for tonight from the board? All right, then we stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate the extra time tonight.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good night.